minimizing, you take from the other side. Okay? So let's say a person is in a community and he made an Erev to the north and he go 4,000 amos. So if he go 4,000, that means he exhausted everything to the south. He can't go more than 1 inch outside. He can't even go an inch out of the city to the south. Now, Yom Tov comes, so we say that all his possessions, all his food, lock into his tchum. Just as he can't go to the south as much as an inch, his possessions cannot be taken in the location where he can't go. So let's say it's Yom Tov, and somebody wants to borrow his coat. So when Yom Tov began, it was his possession, his garment. His garment locked into his tchum. So that means the garment couldn't be taken even as much as an iota to the south. Somebody borrows it, and he has a regular, they didn't make an Erev to him. So he has 2,000 amos in every direction. And he lives outside, within 2,000 amos outside the city. The borrower cannot take it beyond the limits of the one who actually owned it or was in his possession when Yom Tov began. Of course, the item is called karagle. It's karagle habalim. It's like the legs, wherever the feet of the one who owns it could go, the borrower cannot go beyond that. So the Mishnah is discussing a very interesting case. A woman wants to bake bread on Yom Tov, right? So she borrows flour, she borrows salt, she borrows water. So you have three ingredients in there. And salt, 4 ingredients. And each person has a different degree of tchum. So that bread, to what extent could it be taken? It's limited to the tchum of all 4 people. Because every person contributing to the ingredient, that ingredient locks into the tchum of the lender. Since when Yom Tov began, the flour was in Leah's possession, and the yeast was in Rachel's possession. So therefore, each ingredient locks in. So it's limited to the ragle, to the feet of all the contributors, the lenders of those ingredients. It does make a difference. You lend. It does make a difference. Lend. I gift my coat to a person. Gift still whatever whose ever possession was when Yom Tov began, it's locked into that person.
And even if it's a small amount, subsumed.
No, that's the Gemara asked. The Gemara asked that question. The Gemara is going to ask that question. Why is it not subsumed? So we're talking about it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin, just like an egg. It's not subsumed even if you have 10,000 to 1. Because after Yom Tov, it's going to be what? It's going to be permitted, right? That's the concept of davar sheyesh matirin. Something which ultimately will be permitted is not subsumed based on majority. Except here it's a little bit of a problem because we rule by min beino mino if it's not the same species, even davar sheyesh lo matirin, even if it's something which will eventually be permitted, it is subsumed. So the Gemara is going to ask that question. Why by the bread? The flour we understand because that's the vast majority. But the salt, it's that small amount. Or the water compared to the flour should be subsumed. So the Gemara is going to say something interesting. There's a concept of Dover HaMaimed. What's the halacha if you have cheese and a person uses non-kosher vendor in the cheese? So even though milk-wise, volume-wise, there's more than 60 of milk versus the rennet. Maybe it could be even 1,000 times. You're not permitted to eat the cheese. It's not butter. Why isn't it butter? Because what's the whole concept of subsuming? That the minority is not detectable in the majority. But if cheese cannot coagulate unless you have the rennet in there, so that means the whole form of the cheese only formed because of the rennet. So the rennet is evident in every aspect of the cheese. So therefore, volume doesn't play a role any longer. Let's say you have 1,000 to 1, and you know exactly where the 1 is. You can say because it's 1,000 to 1, you could eat the non-kosher piece of meat. Of course not, because you see the non-kosher piece of meat. So the rennet's effect on the cheese is so evident in every part of the cheese, therefore it can't be subsumed. That's called davar HaMaimed. That's the reason why, let's say, what? It's not tam. It's like tam. But even though you don't taste anything. For instance, there's certain things like years ago, even today, it's less, they would have Coke. Coke had very often needed a hechsher because it had glycerin in it. But the glycerin allowed the cola flavor to taste the way it tasted. So it comes out even water-wise. And other ingredients of the cola was much more than the glycerin, but since the glycerin was essential in giving it its taste, its flavor, that's davar HaMaimed. So every bit of that taste is dependent on that glycerin contributing to it. Therefore, it wasn't bottled. That's the reason why you needed the hechsher on cola for that reason. That's why yeast. So the Gemara is going to say over here that without water, you understand, you can't make bread. It's not possible. So the person, even though the water may be a 60th of the flour, but you understand, the bread only formed as bread because there was water. So the water is evident in every bit of the bread. That's the reason why it's not brought in, for that reason.
Same applies perhaps to preservatives?
No. The preservative is not because, again,
The rate doesn't change.
it doesn't exactly, because it's not. It only causes it shouldn't deteriorate. But in terms of what it is, it's not noticeable whether it is a preservative or not a preservative. Doesn't make it. But factually, what's in there? If you have something not kosher in there, what's the halacha? It's not kosher, whether you're creating a new thing or not. The ingredients. If you have an ingredient that has limitation on it, because it originally was the possession of one person, even though it changes now, you don't see it, but you do see it, because the bread itself couldn't be bread unless you had water in the bread. Okay. This svara is applied, as I said, to Davar Maimi. What the Gemara says here is applied there. Davar Maimi is something which gives something its whole status, its stature, its profile. Okay, let's see the Mishnah. Habema va'kelim karagli habalim. Here, an animal or vessels are like the feet of the balim. The balim means the one who had it in his possession when Yom Tov began. Hamos b'emto libno o l'roeh. Now, interesting. What about before Yom Tov? A person gives his animal for his son to take care of, or to a shepherd. So the shepherd has a different chum. Now the shepherd wants to take the flock where he's permitted to go, because when the owner gives his sheep to the shepherd, he's not giving it should be his. He's only a caretaker, right? When I lend a person a garment, let's say I lend somebody my coat before Yom Tov, so that's for his usage. So now he wants to return to me on Yom Tov. The borrower wants to return to me. The owner of the coat is locked into the tchum of the borrower, because there the borrower had usage of the garment. When you give your sheep over to the shepherd has no ownership, no usage of it. He's purely a caretaker. Therefore, its identity, its limitation, identifies with the owner. Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. That's liability. He has no usage rights. Balim means you have rights. You have rights in the item. If you be a shoel, be a borrower. Then it's something else. If you're a borrower, you're a borrower. That's like borrowing a garment. Liability is because you're getting paid. Because you're getting paid, you have to be more responsible. Right? The shepherd has liability if something should happen to the sheep that he's given. But is he called the owner? He's not the owner of the sheep. To any degree, he's not even permitted to use the sheep.
If you loan the coat, it has to be in the domain of the borrowers.
If he lent it to him before Yom Tov.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's the domain of the borrower. So now the borrower wants to return the coat on Yom Tov. And the borrower's tchum is not the same tchum as the lender's. He could return it, but the lender is limited to the area where the borrower could go. He can't take it outside those parameters. That's very logical. Then he's not a shomer. He's a borrower. He's allowed to use the milk. So, but still, what's the animal? So the milk. Let's see, the milk comes out on Yom Tov. That milk can only be taken into the tchum of the owner, because before it was extracted from the body of the animal, it's part of the animal, the milk. Right?
I'm just looking at a simple case of the coat. Coat man, coat man A to man B, and he goes wherever.
When did he lend him? Before Yom Tov. Good.
Okay, so
And each one has a different tchum. The lender has one tchum, and the borrower has none. They don't overlap. No, where they overlap, it could be taken. But what happens if the area where they don't overlap? The lender cannot take that coat, if it's returned to him on Yom Tov, to where the borrower cannot go. Simple.
And the difference in that and the shepherd is
Because when I give my sheep to the shepherd or goat, it's mine. It happens to be in his domain, but he has no right to use it.
to stay in the domain of the.
And no, it remains. It's considered. What determines in whose domain is it? It's not where it's physically located. Who has the right of usage? Whoever has right of usage, that it identifies with that person. That's balim. Balim means owner. There's an ownership aspect to it.
The shepherd can't take it out
Of the owner of that sheep. So let's say he shepherds 20 different people's sheep, and each person has a different tchum. So he can only take those sheep where all the tchumen overlap. But an area where they don't overlap, he can't take it, because he's taking the whole flock together. Because the flock is comprised of many people's sheep. Same thing. Doesn't make a difference. Okay. No, in the city is not a problem. If you're in the city, the city is like Dalai Ramos. Within the city, it's Dalai Ramos. Don't going out of the city. Of course, even the owner comes there, you can't take it out. A sheep cannot leave the city at all. Even before the 2,000 years. Right, correct. Because it's correctly abolish. Doesn't make what they have to, so you have to provide it before. Okay, so we say, Hamosa behemto livno leroa hareilu correctly abolish. So Rashi himself says, okay. Kalim hamyuchodim le'echod min achim shebebayis. What about if you have a family and they share vessels, and one of the vessels or the garments, it's his. It belongs to the family. Let's say a father buys clothing for his children, but they're adults, and so each one has his suit. But really, the father owns all of them. So it's miyuchodim. It's something which is unique. It's exclusive to that particular child. Okay? Harel Karaglov. Since it's something mainly used by that person, it identifies with that brother. Although monetarily it's owned by all of them. It's the same idea. It's like a person borrows something. Right? Since it's Michod Lo, he's the borrower. She'em Yuchodim. What about it's something which could be used by all of them? Hareluk Kimokum Ragli Sholchim. Kimokum Sholchim. It's where they all could go. So only you could be taken where it all overlaps. But an area where it doesn't overlap, you can't take it. Let's take a look at Rashi. Shem Yuchodim Lechem Elukulan Harekol Mak Sholchim Lamokum Shkulum Yuchon Lelech Mutul Holech Eske Avalim Iriv Echom Hem Lesof Alpaim Letzorf Shadow Ivu Humakiv Ol Sholchim Doram Afil Si Achas Mnei Chelko Vemes Maakvim Al Yodo Velo Lichem Letzofon Elapayim Shein Mutorim Behen. Good. Further. Hashol Kli Mechavero Meir Yom Tov. Okay, now we have a more specific case. Person borrows a vessel from his friend before Yom Tov, Erev Yom Tov. You have it? Norman. We're still in the Mishnah. 37a, the bottom. Okay, 3 lines from the bottom. The line. Hashol Kli Mechaver Erev Yom Tov, Keragle Hashoel. If he borrows before Yom Tov, so that Kli, the vessel, the garment, is locked into the feet of the borrower. Right? Because he has usage. Be Yom Tov, if he borrows it on Yom Tov, the same person, rather than before Yom Tov, Karagle Hamashil. Then it identifies with the lender, because everything is determined when Yom Tov began and who had usage of it at that time. Then it would be Karagle Hamashil, the lender. Hear this? Woman borrows from her fellow spices, water, and salt. Lisosa, to make bread. So she's providing the flour. Right? Person has flour, you got to buy water. You're borrowing water, salt, and spice. Hara'elu karagli shteim. It's like the ragli shteim. It's limited to both of them. That means where it overlaps, you can take the bread. Where it doesn't overlap, you can't take the bread. Rabbi Yehuda poter b'mayim. Rabbi Yehuda says the salt and the spice, which you can taste, then it's correct. It locks into the tchum of the lender of the spice and the salt. But water, which totally evaporates, doesn't exist, because vis-a-vis the finished product, it's not there. The spice is there. It's intermingled. Water totally evaporates. It's not there, so therefore, you don't have to be concerned the one who provided the water. Okay, it's clear? Again, it has to exist. If you have milk mixing into, let's say, is absorbed in meat. The milk is in the meat. Here, when you bake put water into dough and you bake it, what happened to that moisture? It evaporated. It evaporated. Most of it evaporated, right? The heat caused to evaporate. I mean, there's some moisture left, right? There's moisture left. No, I understand that. But the end product, look at the end product. The end product is the salt is the same salt, and the spice is the same spice, except it's intermingled in the dough, in the bread. The water is no longer the same. So, and the Gemara is going to say, it doesn't make a difference. But factually, it wouldn't be bread today without the water, so the water is still evident in the bread, even though the majority of it evaporated. See, it's interesting. I mean, factually, if let's say you extract every bit of water, from the bread, it'll turn to what's thing? It'll turn to dust, right? I mean, so you'd say 90% of the water evaporated, but there's still a certain percentage of water in there. So what do you say about mamish? So I think it means that because you can't detect it, because it's not detectable, and because it's not detectable, therefore it's boto. It's min bein omino. It's not detectable. The salt you can taste. The spice you can taste. The halachas we rule that tablim, melech and tabla fil belch l'boto. That salt and spices are not subsumed even if you have 1,000 to 1. Because factually when you taste it, you can taste it. The water, you can't taste it. The texture, but you can't identify where the water is. And since it's a min bein omino, it's two different species, even davashish matirin is subsumed. So that's the reason why Rabbi Yehuda says it's permitted. The Tanakama of Moses is going to answer it may be true, but factually it's obviously noticed because you're not going to have the bread if there wasn't water there originally. So therefore, the water is still something which you still notice as you taste the salt and you taste the spices. Okay. Yep. Okay. Mastisin, so now the Gemara says, Mastisin, loka Reb Dosa. Our Mishnah cannot go to Reb Dosa. We'll see Reb Dosa in the Beitzah. The Tanya of Reb Dosa Omer, V'amri lo Abba Shol Omer. Yeah. Reb Dosa says, others say it wasn't Reb Dosa who said, it was Abba Shol. Halukech behemah michaveiro me'erev Yom Tiv. Person purchases an animal from his fellow, Erev Yom Tiv. Afi shlo moshelo, elo b'Yom Tiv. Although he didn't actually take possession from the seller until Yom Tiv, it identifies with what? With the tchum of the buyer. The buyer here. He buys it before Yom Tiv. Let's say he did a chalupin. He gave him a cloth, or let's say he paid him cash for it. But the man didn't take delivery until Yom Tiv. It's still, even though he didn't take delivery, so it was not physically in his domain. When Yom Tov began, it's correctly lokeach. The tchum is determined by the purchaser, not by the seller. The person who gives over an animal to the shepherd, although he only gave it to the shepherd on Yom Tov, harehu correctly aroeh. It's based on what? It's correctly aroeh, which is contrary to our Mishnah. Because our Mishnah says if you give a sheep to what? To your son or to the shepherd, it's always karagle habaylim, right? Because it's only there for safekeeping. But since the shepherd has no right to use it, it's irrelevant that it's in his domain. Here it says in the Beitzah that if you committed yourself to give it to a shepherd, and he only gave it to him on Yom Tov, it identifies with the shepherd, not with the Bible. So it's the extreme opposite of a Mishnah. A Mishnah says even if you give it to the shepherd before Yom Tov and it's in his domain on Yom Tov, it's karagle habaylim. That's our Mishnah. And here it says that if you give it to the shepherd even on Yom Tov, it identifies with the shepherd, not with the owner. You follow? So how do you reconcile the two? So evidently our Mishnah is not going. It's not going like our Mishnah. Correct?
Can you transfer the ownership?
The ownership was before. Right. But no, but it says but regarding the shepherd. First thing doesn't bother me, but the shepherd case. Our Mishnah says the shepherd is purely it's only for safekeeping. But how does it identify the animal with the owner? That's what it says in the Mishnah. That even if you give it to the shepherd before Yom Tov, Yom Tov comes, it's karagle habaylim. Right? And here it says just the contrary. If it happens on Yom Tov, it's karagle haroeh. It identifies with the shepherd. So the question is, could Reb Dosa, who says that identifies the shepherd, could our Mishnah go like Reb Dosa? I feel same Reb Dosa. You're able to achieve a Mishnah even to Reb Dosa L'kasha. Kan b'ro echad, kan b'shnei roim. Second. Yeah. Let's take a look at Rashi. Tam b'ro echad, top Rashi. Shein be'ira l'ro echad. Let's say in the city you have one shepherd. He shepherds all the flocks of the people. Kol b'nei ir ma'amidim behemtam b'shuso. Here, all the members of the community give it to that shepherd. There's one shepherd. V'niknas fisoso. Therefore, even though it's for safekeeping, it locks in with that one shepherd, even though the shepherd has no right to use it. Hilkoch be'moiche ben lokeach. So if you're dealing with a seller and a buyer, so therefore, if you have one shepherd, where does the owner want the animal to be on Yom Tov? In the domain of the shepherd. So even though he delivers it on Yom Tov, since there's only one shepherd, it identifies with the shepherd. Right? The Mishnah is speaking about the two shepherds. And he hasn't decided which shepherd he's giving it to. And he hasn't So let's say he hasn't decided who to give it to. If he gives it to one of them before Yom Tov, it's locked into that one because he made the decision. But let's say he delivers it on Yom Tov and you have two shepherds. Since he didn't make up his mind which one he's giving to, so whose domain was it for all kinds of purposes? In his. So therefore that's when it locks into his. So our Mishnah says when it locks into what? To the Balim, speaking of the two shepherds. So since the two shepherds and he didn't give it to either, so he didn't decide which one he's giving it to, it's considered his domain. The Beitzah that it says, even if he delivers it to the shepherd on Yom Tov, it's like the shepherd's domain. It's when we have one shepherd. So since you have one shepherd, so good, he had in mind that it should be the shepherd's domain. Therefore, it locks into the shepherd's domain. Because he wanted to give it. Yeah.
No, he doesn't use the shepherd. He takes it out himself.
It's already, no. Let's say factually he never gave it over to the shepherd. He gave it over to the shepherd.
No, on Yom Tov.
On Yom Tov, right.
So if he doesn't give it, if he usually gives it to one shepherd, he usually gives it over. Today, the shepherd is available, so he's going to do it himself. Based on the shepherd, then it will be based on the shepherd.
No, if let's say he planned to give it to the shepherd never showed up. So then it's nothing. It seems to me he gave it to the shepherd. Once they give it to the shepherd, then it locks into that domain. Otherwise, it's purely abstract.
You give giving the shepherd on
Yeah, I understand. But we're saying the case where it gives the shepherd on Yom Tov,
so it changes.
that we say it's in the shepherd's domain, although it wasn't because there was only one shepherd. So what was his mindset before Yom Tov? And these people always give their sheep to the shepherd. So what was his mindset, and whose domain should it be? In the shepherd's domain. Therefore, even though he's giving it on Yom Tov, it's considered the domain of the shepherd. But what happens if you have two shepherds? I didn't give it to either one before Yom Tov. So for all intents and purposes, he's reserving it in his own domain. And when he decides on Yom Tov, that's the one he's going to give it to. So that's like he's decided. Okay? So Marian says, he says, and we're able to deduce this. It says in the Bryce, it says he gave it either to his son or a shepherd. So just as the son is one person, the shepherd's one. There's only one shepherd. Shemamino. It's a conclusive proof. Omer Rab. Okay. Omer Rabba Brachon, Omer Yochanan, Halacha Reb Dosa. Rule of Reb Dosa. Hello. Right? Rabbi Dosa says in the Brisa that if you give it to the shepherd even on Yom Tov, it's locked into the chum of the shepherd. So he says, Rabbi Chon says we rule like Rabbi Yochanan. We rule like Rabbi Dosa. I look at Rabbi Dosa. And this Rabbi Chon saying the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So Maria says, Yom Rabbi Yochanan Ochi. Yom Rabbi Yochanan Aloch is Tam Mishnah. Right? Rabbi Yochanan says, whenever you have an anonymous Mishnah, you always follow an anonymous Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? That even if you gave it to the rower before Yom Tov, in whose domain is it? It's in the domain of the owner, right? It says when you give this is it. If you gave it to the shepherd on Yom Tov, it's in whose domain? It's the domain of the owner. So how do we reconcile it? Rabbi Yochanan says we always rule like the Stam Mishnah. So Maria asks, what kind of question? We already answered it. Didn't we establish in Mishnah speaking? It's two shepherds. And since he didn't give it to either before Yom Tov, so it was undecided. So when Yom Tov began, whose domain was it? It was the domain of the owner. That's the reason why it's Karagle Abalim. But the Brisa that it says it's Karagle Haroeh, it's like it's locked into the tchum of the shepherd. There's one shepherd. So even though it only came into his domain on Yom Tov, but what was the mindset of the owner? It should be in his domain. Therefore, it's locked into the domain of the shepherd, because there's only one shepherd. You have it. It's not complicated. Further. Tan Rabbanon. Shnaim shishol l'chol ha'ke'echad b'shutfis. Zeh leilich bo b'shachris leis ha'mezher, zeh likoris bo arvis leis ha'mishteh. Two people borrow a garment. One to go to shul and to study during the daytime, and the other one's going to wear the garment at nighttime when he goes to parties. Right? He's going to parties. Ze'iriv olav the the one who's going to the shul, needs him for the shul in Bismash, he made his tchum to the north. The Ze'iriv olav the Durham, and the other borrower, he made his Eiriv to the south. Meaning there's a lot of areas that doesn't overlap. Right? Because it stops. Ze'iriv olav the tzofim, halach l'tzofim karagli v'sharav olav the Durham. The one whose tchum goes to the south, he cannot, to the north, he can't go to the south only to the degree that the one who made the tchum to the south. The mitzu is at tchum. Let's say each one exhausted his tchum in either direction, the north and the south. Right? That means you can't move it. Then it's what? Hareza lo yizerim imkoma. You cannot move it from its place because you've exhausted in both directions. One makes it to the north 4,000 amos, the other one makes it 4,000 to the south. So there's no wiggle room there. So where is it? You can't take it as an inch out of the city. If you took it an inch out of the city, it's gone. Well, since the partner's in it, okay? No. Chum is always determined by the Baal, by the owner. Normally it's talking about something that's hefker. If the ownership changes on Yom Tiv, it's based on when Yom Tiv began. So whatever Tchum was there, the item identifies with that Tchum. No.
Could you theoretically give it to one person in the morning and the person in the afternoon before Yom Tiv? Say you have this garment for noon and you have a garment for the afternoon?
That's supposed to. That's exactly what we're saying. That's exactly what they say. Except they made up the division before. They made it before Yom Tov, right? But factually, this garment is a two-location garment. So therefore, it's locked into where both of them are able to go. Where neither could go, if neither of them could go there, you can't take the garment there. Okay. It's interesting. I mean, if you hold Breira, right? Breira means that the garment during this period of time is mine. Right? One they decide. I mean, it's beyond Breira. No, but already it's predetermined. We don't need Breira. We predetermined. I use it in the morning to go to Shachris. You use it in at night to go to the Shalom Zofa, Friday night. Finished. Locked into both of the tchum, and therefore each one could only take where the other one could go. If that has nothing to do with Breira. Idmar. Shnaim shaloku chovis ubein b'geshufis. Two people purchase a barrel of wine and an animal. The partnership, they're going to slaughter the animal on Yom Tov. Right? They're going to slaughter on Yom Tov. And they're going to divide the meat and they're going to divide the wine. Rabba mechovis mutaris. Rav says when they divide the barrel of wine, each one can take the wine where they want to take the wine. Reuven takes it to his domain, Shimon takes it to his domain. Basura. Yeah, but the animal you cannot. If you hold Breiro, whichever part is mine was meant to be mine from before. So why? And that's the reason why the wine, when you divide the wine, he could take the wine wherever he could go. He said the same thing with the animal. You see, the animal it's asura. You can't take the animal where the other partner cannot go. Why not? So Mark's going to say a very interesting svara. When we divide wine, 100 gallons, 50 of mine, 50 is yours. Each 50 has no relevance to the other 50. Right? An animal as a living entity, each part of the animal nourishes the other part of the animal. There's blood flowing through its veins. There's nutrition. There's things that are being delivered. So it comes out, every aspect of the animal is intermingled with the other person's ownership. So if it's intermingled, you can't divide. I mean, you can divide it because that's on a monetary level, but in terms of tchum, actually when Yom Tov began, this animal was interlaced with both of their ownership. Right? Because each one contributed to another part of the animal, another aspect of the animal. So let's see. So Rav says chovis muteris beim asura. Shmuel says chovis nam asura. Even the barrel of wine is not. Mike says Mike Sova Rav. Rav says that the barrel's permitted, the animal's not permitted. Correct? Ikshava yesh breiro. If he's a pin yesh breiro, that's the reason why the barrel is permitted. I feel behemoth tishri. So that's the case the animal should be permitted. We have to be divided. Right? Same idea. Ikshava ein breiro. And if he's of the opinion ein breiro, we don't apply for breiro. I feel chavis nami asura. You shouldn't be able to take the wine wherever you want to take it, because maybe it's the other person's wine. On that, the Gemara says, "Olam shava yesh breiro." To actually go to yesh breiro, v'shanya behemoth kol yavki tchumin mi'adod. It's because the tchumin they're nourished from one another. Since every aspect of the animal benefits from every other part of the animal, that means each one is absorbed with an entity which is the other person's. Therefore, neither could take the animal in a location where both of them cannot go.
This is the case, of course, before the animal slaughtered.
If they slaughtered before Yom Tov, there's no question. Right?
They slaughtered on
So that means the animal was a living entity on Yom Tov. So therefore, when it was alive, each one was contributed to the other part of the animal. So even if we divide, part of what I have is yours, and part of what I have is us. We're agreeable, you could take it. The fact that when Yom Tov began, that part that's absorbed in yours was what? Was mine. So if that's the case, it's locked into that chum. Okay? That's the svara. Shanya behemoth, the kayanki tchumin yadodi. The tchumin, they're actually being nourished from one another. Let's take a look in Rashi. Here, end the first wide line. Yantri tchumin, chelke behemoth shiruyin l'shnei tchumin. They have relevance to both tchumin. But let's say Shmuel, who says even the chavis is also, what's it also? He doesn't know the breira. Right? The question was only on Rav. If the chavis, the barrel, if you divide, you can take it wherever you want, that means you hold breira. So why don't they apply breira to the animal? The answer is because of what tchumin yadki adori, because each part of the animal is nourishing the other. But according to Shmuel, it doesn't even start. If you hold ein breira, that's exactly why you can't divide the barrel and you can't divide the animal. I don't need any highfalutin concepts to understand why you can't. Right? Okay.